Some of us have remote jobs anyway, but 2020's brought a lot of people to being remote now. So when we don't see ourselves every day or see our coworkers every day, it makes it a lot harder for us to see all of our coworkers as people. And the same thing for kind of our software users. And Dr. Simmons mentioned in her talk that some things like that, when we're burnt out, it's hard for us to see some other people's humanity, which I think is a good lead in for our next talk from Kristen Seversky. Kristen's a product owning, code writing, design thinking people person that wants to make tech more meaningful and ethical in our world. Her easily excited, high energy, and deeply curious personality tosses her in a lot of directions, and she enjoys the idea of bringing more of ourselves to our work. When she's not at a computer, which is rarely the case, you can find her running around with her dog, draining her energy in some game or sport, or continuing her stream of consciousness on Twitter. Kristen's talk is called Keeping It Human, Swapping Code for Connections. Take it away, Kristen.
Awesome, thank you. I'm gonna hit the share now. Hopefully that get the right screen too. And all right, so hopefully you can see my intro screen, Keeping It Human, Swapping Code for Connections. Good to go. I do want to warn that this discussion, trying to put this in a half-hour session was difficult. So I did try to do my best to capture not only my own story, so you can see from my own example as a person that went through this, what you can expect from trying to shift in your career, but also why I wanted to shift in my career in my ever pursuit of keeping it human and bringing the most of myself to my roles, what that can mean in our current industry. So to help set some expectations, I did give a bit of an outline. So what are you about to hear? You can expect to hear in this talk a lot about career shifts, as well as my own story as an example. So I didn't go like off the wall here with a billion role changes, but I did do some that caught a lot of people off guard. And I think that's the reason why when I bring this stuff up in other circles, people are like, oh, I'm on the fence of this kind of change. What can I expect? And I get like messaging on the side of, hey, what else did you go through? Or what can I do with this? So once I started to see more of that, I was like, well, here, I will put it on a platform. We can talk about it. And maybe this will scratch some more brains into thinking about exploring their own role changes and what that can mean for yourself. So the third bullet there is navigating status quo and the realities of our current, our society, our industry, because you'll see in pretty critical times of my past where I was faced with a make or break decision. Like, okay, you did all this stuff, you did the work, now pick what you're gonna do and stick with it. So I wanna talk a little bit about that and how that impacts us and that ability to be flexible in roles. And ultimately, I want this to start a conversation. As my intro states, and as you'll see in these slides, I'm very extroverted. I like connecting with people. And if it means talking about things as an example, that would make me very happy. So, find me on Twitter, find me in the Slack. We can talk about this as much as we want. What this will not be is a tip about each individual role I had. I don't want to make this like a deep dive of like, here's how to be a software dev, here's how to be in design thinking. Like you're not going to get that in this talk. You're also not going to get a truly deep dive in my experience, nor is this a talk about where I've worked, because it's more about the shift and the reality around that than where I worked or what. And I'll also try very hard to avoid long-winded tangents. You'll see a couple times in the slides where I'm going to block myself from going off on the deep end, but I put parentheses, disclaimer. So that's the agenda. We're going to quickly go through my background, just me personally, see me as a little one. Picking a path, that impact of having to pick and choose, like, okay, what are you going to do with your life and your career? How I chose dev, a big shift that happened later, and then how I got to product life. The core of this talk that I want is to focus on the FAQ section. I know we have breakouts later, but I've since in this whole journey surfaced a lot of questions that I get over the years that maybe I can just offer to you instead of you having to ask me, because I think that's usually what people come talk to me about anyways. And then I'll just wrap up with a quick summary. So let's get rolling. Okay, so who the heck am I? Quick background. I'm telling you this because I think it's important to know my personality type, how someone like me navigates in the industry, and how I choose roles, and to see that a lot of the stuff, people, is very deeply ingrained. So this is a snapshot of when I was 7.5. This was an Easter morning. I'm running around, my brothers, I have 4 older brothers. They're running around behind me looking for eggs, but I'm on the ground and completely pumped. Why? Because I got this little slip of paper in one of my eggs. You can't read it. I was going to show you the video. I have this on video, but it wouldn't have translated. But on that piece of paper, it says 15 minutes on AOL. And I kid you not, at 7.5, I just wanted nothing more was to like be near the internet, be by computers, near devices. So this is a deeply ingrained fascination that I've had since I was young that was at least my kind of beacon of, I think I want careers or opportunities in this space or whatever lets me stay close to this. And I'm grateful I had this because I also tripped upon a really nice math teacher. People, thank your teachers. They help you more than you know. That guided me towards programming because she's like, okay, you like a lot of people, you like connecting with people, you like computers, and you like math. I will avoid a whole tangent about math being related to good development, by the way. See, tangent's not going to do it. But I happen to like math because of the puzzles. And so she guided me towards a programming class. And to me, I was like, all right, well, I'll go try this out. I really like being near these devices. And people, I'll tell you, this right here was a game changer. I took the sole programming class in high school. I was about 14 or 15 when I played with Visual Basic. And it was like the first time where I saw all of my interests coming together into one spot because I could make these dialog boxes and screens and I can add colors and I could then program it to do what I want with the patterns and the syntax. So, and just ultimately I'm thinking of like, how can I make things that help people and put it online and all these other dreams that came to life in front of me through programming. So that is what led me towards this whole like, okay, I guess I want to do programming. And I'm glad I had this because here's the next thing that we did. Society slams this at you when you're a teenager and says, okay, kid, what do you want to do with your life? And as someone who's like, that's almost like putting the cage around me. Like, okay, well, pick one thing, hope you don't screw it up because you got to get this right. And it's really hard to change. Like all of these things permeated my mind as a teenager. And I tried really hard to guide myself towards something. But once again, that same math teacher, and man, she's helped me in my life, but she came up to me and was like, hey, so I know you're trying to decide on colleges. Have you thought about this one over here, over that? Because I really thought I could only just do like IT. I thought it was going to be like a vanilla course degree. And that was just my life now. I'll be in IT. But fortunately, she let me know about Rochester Institute of Technology, which is out here in Rochester, where I live now. And I ended up coming here for college and found a degree that had a bit of everything in it. And so once again, you can see in my personality type, I'm trying to bring more to a hard decision that usually wants us to do like one. So I managed to wiggle through that, went to RIT, there's your proof. I didn't buy that image, sorry, grad images, it's proof though, I'm keeping the watermark. And I got my 2 degrees and was like, yay, I know what I'd like to do in life. But then boom, again, what one career path do you want? And it's like, oh, okay, once again, I'm kind of stuck with picking and choosing. So I ended up, through my degree and everything I had behind me, I went for software development, right? So my first foray into my career was in software development. And I'm not saying this negatively, by the way. As I kept repeating this presentation, I was like, is this coming off like I begrudgingly went into dev? It's not the case at all. It was, once again, going back into like 2010, figuring out what can I do to bring the most of my humanity to a role. And at the time, the option in front of me seemed to be software development. And so that was my new home and I loved it. So this is me in 2013 at Breaking Development. That was the name of the conference at the time, which then changed to Beyond the Desktop. So this is Nashville. Everyone trustingly put down their devices and let people take pictures. Like, remember when we used to detach from our devices? This is what you can get. So this really embodied where I was in my career at this point. I really felt at home, like my homeostasis was here. But at the same time, I was in my second software job at this point. And in that job, I was able to bring a lot to the table because I was a sole developer. Let me rephrase that. Because I was a sole developer at this second job of my life, I was able to bring a lot of me to the table because I had to solve problems for a national company that had clients all over the US, but it was just me. I was just building databases and UIs to help connect, and we were maintaining the in-house server. And then at the end of the day, I had to be the support person for everything I built as well, which that scratches an itch that I don't see as much in different software places. That brought my Keep It Human to life in my coding job, because I not only was having to do all those other pieces, but to hear firsthand from the people themselves complaining about using your code that you built is an experience that I think more of us should have. And in that role, that's when I realized, ooh, I really need to stay close to end users and close to customers and people and try to keep all of this as human as possible, because it's very easy to splinter out and start getting into your silos. And then next thing you know, you're just building and coding, which happened a lot. There were a lot of times where I was just like building something and, you know, you lose concept of the end goal and you just throw that code out, you miss the mark. So back to the point of like, okay, well, I need to do something else in my career because that's what society tells you. It's like, you got to move forward, keep moving forward. So I was like, okay, I guess I go for senior developer. And once again, asterisks around tangents. I can make a whole presentation on what does senior mean? What does that mean in this industry? What are we saying to people when we put senior on things? I'll avoid the tangent. I just want to throw that out there as a bone to pick. But either way, I became a senior developer, but then something happened that I did not plan. A wild design thinking training appeared. So in my third role, when I was a senior software developer, the company I worked for at the time decided to bring on a design thinking training. And I lit up because thinking back to my college degree and the fact that I found all these ways to blend all of my interests, yet I still had to pick certain facets at a time. I was like, oh, it felt like you're seeing your old hat. You're like, oh, I could bring this old hat back and wear it and it's okay. Like I didn't have to just leave that one behind. So it was a 3-day training. I got very excited. And for those of you that don't know what design thinking is, this is a still from the Cooper Professional Education video. They have crash courses on Vimeo. I do have to put a damper on real quick, people. Cooper had to shut their doors this year because of COVID. So, you know, as I sit and give this talk, I know we're all here virtually and we're doing this and it's possible. I do like to take a moment to really highlight the fact that we're in the middle of this wild time, weird time, and even some of the resources that you're seeing might not be available for a long time because of a pandemic. So that's a bummer, but you know, in solidarity with what they trained me on and how they impacted my career, I was like, well, I'll give them a still from what I learned. So this is a high level view of the design thinking process. It's essentially adding that research friction up front in the process. So when you're going to start working on solutions or problems to solve, you want to focus on understanding the end users and the people involved. So, and understand is a kind of loaded word, right? But it's empathizing, getting into the shoes of, and looking at their environment, finding stories. And then with those stories and those details, you can start to envision. This is where the sticky note stuff comes in. You see people putting sticky notes and everything. And then you get into prototyping. So like that's when you start to actually get into code, is that prototype phase to just make high level, just tinker a bit with the idea that you have and you iterate. Because I'm just speaking for myself, but a lot of my career and observing the world around me through the past decade, it's a lot of like, I have an idea, code it. And it's like, oh, okay, well, that's nice, but you're missing a lot of in-between pieces. And are you sure you know why you're coding this or who you're coding it for? And it's all those big, meaty, purpose-driven questions that just get bypassed for the sake of move fast, break things. So anyways, having this design thinking come in was a breath of fresh air for me. It brought me into this type of role and dynamic where you can work with people from across different departments and actually, you know, see how people think from a vantage point of sales versus engineering versus marketing, and even your CEO. Like we had our CEO involved with these sessions, and it was just really fun to get different ideas and hash this together. And I think it really brings forward a North Star for more people to align to and work cohesively together. Keep it human, all right? So this was the big shift though, not to be a spoiler alert, but this was when I was like, oh, I really like this. How can I infuse this more in my day-to-day? How can I, because I can't just cut this off now. You can't just have this training and then cut this off and go back to normal. And fortunate for me, my company actually opened up a full-time role for this and I took it. And let me tell you, people were deeply confused when I went from all that time of building up my software dev cred to suddenly this stuff. And I got a lot of this. People were just like, well, wait, so you code, but you're doing design thinking, but you're not, like, the cognitive dissonance when you make a shift like this is strong, and people are going to look and ask a lot of questions. And even worse, they like to think that they know that you're not going to like it. Like I had a lot of people that were like, oh, you'll get bored, you'll miss it, you'll go back. And that's to be expected, right? Like if you know me and how much I enjoyed my software side, the development side, that's a fair assessment. But, you know, what I wanted to do to counter all that is show people that I'm not leaving anything behind. I'm not just dropping and running. I'm bringing my software development with me into a new role to get to a different vantage point together. And some of the highlights, I don't even have to really amplify it too much. It's just, here's what kind of happened. I will disclaim that I don't own these impacts. Like, this wasn't just like because of me. It was because of design thinking in this opportunity. I did get to see Scrum teams looking at who and why a little more consistently, and not just jumping into the what and how they were building things at the user story level. So even just peppering in some of this at the team level is an improvement from the usual just build fast. And product owners and business folks around me were recognizing different strategies. And instead of just jumping to, oh, that's the hottest thing to build, or that's the most important, they were able to stop and just put that friction up and ask and go, hey, are we doing this? Is this really the most important thing? Who, why? And again, just repeating that kind of process. Same for sales and marketing. Instead of waiting for a window to just place a product in and just say, yeah, you need this. Like, I could tell there was different discussions that were listening for opportunities to solve problems in different ways. And that even actually led to a lot of sales coming to our dev teams like, hey, I had this call and I was going to give them this product, but then I thought, what if we bring this over here with this feature? And it started to help build a backlog for future implementations. So it's not to make this out like this is a magical thing, but it did impress me at the time of how much a little nudge in this direction makes a big difference. So that was, and plus I got to have a lot of fun with it. I got to switch over to a new realm and give talks from different angles. Instead of talking about, you know, my code editor or something cheesy in the dev side, like I was able to go over and talk about why should you care about the human experience? And I think because of that shift, it let me bring an angle from my dev history on top of this very necessary, you should care about the human experience. And it was just a good time all around. Unfortunately, the company started taking a different angle. And so I was kind of faced once again with, you have to make a choice on another role. You have to move on. Where are you going to go? What are you going to do? And I still, again, despite all this history of trying to bring the most of me into a role, I still was like, oh no, do I go back to code? Do I stick to this design work? What do I do? And I ended up going with product. So as I got to know product more, and I assure you, I can ask everyone in this room what product means to them, you're going to get a different answer. And I can also attest to that for this reason. There's memes for days on products or product people. And I can tell you, I can identify with each of these at a different day at any given point. So yeah, there's a lot to learn on the product side. But for me, I wanted to still have that role that let me bring in that quantitative, qualitative analysis that I got from my design thinking, but also be close to the developer so I can keep that kind of, that code dev day-to-day feeling as well. And product ownership really gave me that opportunity. So, and it's the best of all of my worlds to kind of distill all of that. I'm still close to code. I have multiple teams I work with that I get to see day-to-day how they ram into things. I'm still among the developers. I see how they think and dig into code or bugs and limitations. I will joke in meetings where I'm like, I'm putting on my dev hat, just deal with me. But if you go this path, you're going to run into this issue with this service. And so I can still bring all that in. Plus, I'm also bringing in the fact that I didn't think about making my actual product level more tool efficient. So I've subsequently ended up building things for the product level that are solutions. And that's kind of been a fun element of blending my two roles together even more so. And as for the design thinking side of my past, I'm still interviewing end users. That's a big part of product ownership and gathering those stories. Like I literally like to go sit in our different departments and just be like, what's your world like? What do you do? What do you need to make sure that I can be that bridge to our development and making sure that we're building the right things. Same with identifying personas and all that wonderful jazz of design thinking, of making sure that you know who you're building for and finding that why. So this is all hopefully reassuring to folks that if you are on that precipice of like, I need to do something different, that you don't leave this stuff behind. It comes with you. So I did want to leave at least, the 10 minutes for the frequently asked questions section. So hopefully by me giving these to you, that will reduce the questions you have later for me. But either way, some main ones are, let's say I'm considering a switch. How might I decide it's a good idea? And this is deeply personal. I don't feel comfortable saying, yes, it's a great idea, like across the board. It's to each their own. But I do have some ways that I know I help myself navigate whether this was the right idea. So asking yourself like what the day-to-day change would be, what kind of goals are you looking for, or what's making you want to get out of the role you're in, really checking in with those motives to see, is this being driven by something different, or am I just bored? I'm someone who gets a little bit uncomfortable when I'm too comfortable. So it's another thing where I'm like, okay, I've been here long enough. This is time to do something different. So maybe that's something else that might be in the back as a motive that you're not really recognizing. And another one I think is important for this question is, are you able to change your mind? Because some people, they want to try this out, and sometimes you might get into it and you realize, and you might not be able to make any adjustment from there. For instance, if you're up and moving for a new role, like I would weigh that risk a little bit, because I had the luxury of being in the same company. They knew who I was. They knew what I was interested, like what my goals were. So it wasn't like this jarring shift within the company. So those are all little kind of warnings that I would ask you if you're on this path. What's a misconception about product that you had as a developer and how that changed? So because of my roles, I didn't have a whole plethora of product owners. So I don't have like this anecdotal evidence of one assumption, but I did really have that kind of Steve Jobsy approach to product of like, you got one person who just has a vision that they just want to see happen. And I thought it was very individualistic. So I was like, oh, well, maybe, each product owner really has hard visions that they just drive. And now that I'm in the product space, quite different. I will note that it all depends on the size of your company too and your structure, but I personally see myself as more of a product coordinator. I look over a lot of our platform needs and make sure that things are, just moving along and fluidly staying aligned so that it's not just this ramming effect of different teams clashing together. So that one definitely I learned in real time, very much a different thing than what I expected. Question 3, what skills did you pick up when you shifted to product? I really wish I could tell you that I got better at writing short, concise, and sweet emails. I think that that's something that really good product people are good at, or just people in general that are, especially remote now. If you can write a really good email that gets the point across in a couple minutes, bravo. But the biggest one, and this is one that I don't know if I would have gotten as a developer, I think about that often, not dying on every hill. That is definitely a lesson from product that I've been forced to face, because I feel like in my dev sphere of influence, I was able to see whether it was a bug or a path I wanted to take with the code. I had that control to just go do that thing. And you could just be like, yeah, I'm going to fix that. I'm going to fix that. Bringing that attitude to products, especially in a big company like mine, is whee! You have to watch it, because then you could start, burning out and wanting to take on everything. And so that was a big lesson to watch for between these roles. Question 4 is, what do you and don't you miss about your old roles? Okay, so the big one is, I miss putting on my headphones, finding a really good playlist, and just getting lost in code. That is something that you cannot replicate. I can't find a way to scratch that itch in different roles. Like that is one that if you still have that in your role right now, cherish that one, because that's essentially what got me into software and why I was interested in it, is because I found something where I can get lost in. And with all my interests, it was hard to cough that up. But at the same time, I recognize that I don't want to do that every day, though. It's not something I need to do every day. It's why I'm like, okay, cool. I know I can go back to that. I will always have code in my back pocket if I want to. What else can I do to help wrangle people and focus on the human element and less on the code element? Question 5, what advice would you give yourself if you can go back when you decide to change career paths? The biggest advice I can give is just pace yourself. I think people think that these are little modest jumps from role to role. It could even be within your own company. Like just pace yourself, reset your expectations, give yourself room to absorb what's going on. If you haven't gleaned yet, I tend to be a little more fast paced and I get really eager to just take things on and run. But this role change it took time not only to set the expectations of everyone else, but even just to get my own understanding of what I was going through on top of the reality check of being in a new company. Like all that stuff added up together. And I wish I could just go back and say, you're doing okay. You don't have to have this mastered in 2 weeks. Like that's not even possibly realistic. So just giving yourself space to absorb those changes. Okay, so I threw a lot at you. I have a too long didn't read, because I know there's a lot here. It's easy for me to meander on this one. If anything stood out to you or you want to get deeper into any of these topics, by all means, come find me. But here's my too long didn't read. It's check the rules in your head, because I'm hoping the takeaway from this talk is that you can see how often in my life I had to do this, like, I have to pick one, I have to do this, I have to do that. Now I go to senior, now I do, like, there's a lot of robotic cues in my world, in my career, that I kind of wish I could have checked them more and just tested them more, especially since, you know, thinking back to the design thinking, that was completely off the map. I didn't plan that, and that came in, and it was just an opportunity to flex in a different way and take on a role in a different way. So if you don't check those rules and you don't expand that, you know, that thinking in your mind, you might miss stuff like that and say, well, that's nice, but I'm a developer. And then you're forever in that column when you could totally be doing other things altogether. So double check that you're giving yourself space to explore those paths and find out what better suits you. Spot the lesson. This one, I say this kind of snarkily because I feel like with this whole pandemic right now, we're all in the middle of trying to figure out what the lesson with all this is. Like, what can we take from this in this time into the future that isn't, you know, that is productive and helpful. But pandemics aside, if possible, each role can give you a bit of a lesson to take forward, because there's not a single role that I've had that I look back and think that was a waste of time, right? Like, I want to reduce that mindset that you drop these things and that nothing's relevant, even between industries. Even if you switch industry, I guarantee you're going to bring something from that last one over to the new one that will help you in some way. And that's back to if you spot that lesson and carry it. Just for example, though, I did want to add an example, like the not dying on every hill. That was my lesson, right? That was my most recent product lesson, that as a concrete example of, I would probably keep running into that problem if I didn't just go, oh, this is my thing. I have to grow through this. This is my thing. So it helps you to unstick yourself as well. So hopefully that is a way to spin a potentially not so fun experience into something positive for yourself. Nothing is forever. If anything, I think this past year has shown us a lot that what we thought is the normal forever is apparently not. And I'm personally kind of the personality type that if the table's flipped, I'm like, what else can we throw in the air? So nothing's forever. Lots of things are changing all the time, especially in our industry, especially in the world around us. Try not to lock yourself in. I get that it's helpful for pushing yourself along and trying to stay focused in an industry that's full of options and distractions, but just maybe ease up on that once you've got a path, because you don't want to burden yourself with, this is my life now, and you start to spin. Nothing's forever. I want to also raise the importance of knowing that, okay, I didn't like that. So say some of you do heed some of this advice, if it's even advice, or you get inspired to go try something different. It's okay to not like whatever you try. If you get to that point and you're like, oh, just kidding, this was not what I thought, because, you know, with an asterisk around this, you can't always tell what the role is going to be from the outside until you're in it, you know, like descriptions are tough. You got to really be in a place before you're like, oh, this is not what I thought, my bad. But that's good. It's okay, because knowing what you don't like to me is arguably as good as knowing what you do like, to help narrow down options for yourself in the future to keep yourself on a good path. And then my ultimate takeaway, my last slide here, is look for some bigger boxes. I was able to successfully navigate, of course, through my, you know, I have privileges and just the wonderful network of people I know too, that always helps. But just being able to push and challenge those notions of you have to be this, and that includes only this, and you can't bring this hat here. Because I'm living proof that if you kind of want to wiggle it in, you could probably find a role for yourself somewhere along the lines to bring more of yourself. And I think when we can bring more of ourselves, that's back to the keep it human notion. We're actually sharing more of just more vantage points and more of that inclusion around us, and able to create much better solutions that speak to humans on the other side. So look for those bigger boxes and ways to bring more of yourself. All right, that's all I got, but thank you so much, Heartifacts, for having me. I appreciate being able to have this talk, especially after all the random conversations I've had in various DMs about this. So if anything struck you, you can find me on Twitter. I am a stream of consciousness type, so fair warning. You're not gonna make me feel bad if you're like, she's too much. It's just is what it is. But either way, here to help. Thank you.
And thank you, Kristen. We at Heartifacts appreciate having you as well. Do you have a good pronunciation for your Twitter name?
It's just Kristen, but in leet. So it's not really a pronunciation. It's just my name and numbers.
I was kidding.
I'm very literal on these. I'm like, maybe for 5, 7.
That's fine. One of the things I really liked was you mentioning about how changing roles or jobs always results in you taking something the next position with you. And one of the things
Yep.
I've found is I call myself a polyglot engineer because it feels like at every job working in a different language or
Yeah.
totally different role. And so I see a lot of that transition going from like the types of problems I might solve kind of carry over and finding new ways to do things too. So I really like that.
Thanks.
Yeah. Do you think there's anything to be said for maybe, let's say, a developer trying to get at least a little bit of a part in the product roles, like you're shadowing a PM or or take on a
That's I mean, sorry to cut you off, but I see your head with that, and like part of me says yes immediately, because I mean, at least personally, I love when developers are like, I want to get closer to the end user. I want to see what they're dealing with, and because more often than not, I'm used to developers who are like, Kristen, I don't care about that. I want to just code over here, and I try to distill that as the PO. So thinking of my own software dev history, I had to tell my boss at the time, I was like, I really like working with people. So, and I remember he was like, really? I was like, oh, wow. I really thought that was clear. So don't assume that the people around you or the folks that let you work in different capacities know that you want to do that. I would highly recommend that you just go talk to that manager or whomever and say, I'm very interested in this. What can we do? Because I just personally would be very shocked if they're like, nothing. They can probably bring you into some user studies or whatever sort of research that they do, and please, by all means, bring it closer to the code.
Yeah. I've always appreciated at least like dabbling a little bit in the other areas just to be familiar with the other pieces that are kind of going on. Somebody had asked, what do you think you would have done differently if you'd wanted to change roles but not within the same organization?
That one's trickier because I honestly think I needed that internal trust to make that kind of gap, because I kept thinking, I'm like, could I have made that same bridge to another company without the backing that I had in my current company? So I don't take that for granted. I think that definitely makes it a smoother transition, because I would have been knocking at doors for products saying, hey, I've been a software developer over here and all this, but like, I really want to do product. And I think they would have been like, So yeah, that would have been a bit different, but it's hard to say. Sometimes companies see what you bring just as a person too. It's not so much your resume and bullets on it. So I don't want to like make anyone think it's going to be possible, but it was definitely a smooth thing for me.
Yeah. Do you have any suggestions on exploring like these alternate paths without actually switching those roles?
Yeah, so I think it's a lot of just, you have to do a little bit of your own homework and looking around of what those roles mean. Maybe it's just, if you can ask people that are in your company, like, what's your day-to-day like? I think shadow sessions are valid. In my company, I'm at a bigger company, but we do have people come and shadow, and they're from completely different departments, and that's fair. And if you don't have something like that, maybe start a way to start showing each other these different skill sets. Because if that means that you're bringing more of what you want to do in your heart for the role you have to the table, that's a huge win. You know, I personally think it's more draining to try and fit myself in a small box of like, I'll just do only this. That's a lot harder on me than being like, oh, can I go explore over here and see what I can do over here too? No? Okay, well. So yeah, just maybe just ask around or follow people on social media. I know I'm following like a very get back off of social media talk, but I do think social media is extremely powerful for learning what you can expect in these different roles. So it can be a good tool for that.
Yeah. How do you notice if you're blocking your own growth? Like, for example, when those assumptions in your head don't really want to go away?
Yeah, that one's tricky because, you know, that's where I was having a hard time painting out this path, because I kind of trust my gut though. If there's a point where I really feel like I'm being more held back or my hands are tied, that's usually my tell of, okay, why do I feel this way? Is it because I just don't align with the style? Is it the process that's not letting me grow? The management, the leadership. So more often than not, I'm going to assume it's an external force that's holding me back more than myself. But it's also, I'm still working on breaking that thought that I have to do one thing and do it, you know, forever. And I think since I got past that point as the design thinking thing, I've been much better at going like, ooh, what else can I do? And I will warn you, not every place is up for that. You got to find the right places that want you to be that person, because you know, when I work at a bigger company, people are like, stay in your lane, you're supposed to do this. But it's at the same time, I think people in the end know that you're just trying to bring more of yourself in.
Yeah. Were you able to inspire or mentor any peers or coworkers along the way with your journey to consider these alternate paths or roles?
Not so much on the path just yet, at least not like directly. I haven't been asked like, let's sit down and talk about role shifts. I think I did see light bulbs along the way of people going, oh, I'll never forget one of my old coworkers. I really looked up to him, still do, as a developer. And I was like, you're such a good coder. You're so good at what you do. And I remember he shot back. He's like, yeah, but you can learn code. He's like, the other elements of like connecting business and people and all these other departments, he's like, that's a trickier thing. And I was like, ooh. So I think that turned on some light bulbs in my dev team of like, it's not all just about code, you know, you got to kind of breathe a little bit, bring in some humans here and have more of these discussions about what else is going on.